Hello, my name is Andrew Castle. I am the Outreach and Process Coordinator for the Critical Zone Collaborative Network's Big Data Cluster. This is another great cluster chat. This morning I am joined by, please introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Isabel Ahlstrom. I'm a new graduate student at the University of Vermont, and I'm working with Julia Pertrial.
You are a graduate of Smith College, one
Yeah.
of the colleges that when you say that name around the world of academia, people are like, oh, well, well, well. What was your admissions journey like to get you into Smith? Was it your first choice? Was it your backup school? How did you get in there?
Yeah. So I actually grew up in Northampton, Massachusetts. So yeah, my journey to get to Smith was kind of an interesting one. I actually went to an elementary school on the campus, and my mom arrived in Northampton back in the 80s because she was there as an adult student. And she, with my brother, who I think was like 8 at the time, and so she landed in Northampton and stayed there. And then when it was time for me to go to school, I didn't really know what I was searching for, but Smith gave me, um, it really kind of came down to a good offer. And I knew that I was going to get a really stellar education, mostly because I actually knew a lot of the professors. And yeah, so that was kind of my journey to get to Smith.
Were you a dedicated elementary, middle school, high school student, like really focused on the next step all the way through, or was it just sort of really come naturally to you?
I think I always really liked learning and I liked being curious, but my partly because my folks didn't live in Northampton, so I ended up uh I ended up going to a high school it was a performing arts charter school, which is nothing like science. The science education that I got there was not super great because a lot of the other students were really focused on. I have so many classmates that have gone into the arts, but I didn't. And by the time I got to Smith, I didn't realize that I was going to go into uh, more of a hard science field. I kind of dabbled in some of the social sciences and then realized I really didn't like it. And it kind of brought me back. I always liked science, but didn't have a foundational background to build off of. And so it did end up kind of through just kind of curiosity led me back to starting to take geology classes.
And you were a geosciences major at Smith. Once you
Yeah.
declared your major, did you look around like your childhood bed was like, wow, I have been collecting rocks this whole time. And reflecting, did you see sort of how the path got you there?
In sixth grade, I did a project. We were asked to write like a very short scientific report. And I wrote one on geothermal energy. And it was the first thing that I remember being really proud of writing about. And I look back on that now and I'm like, oh, okay, like I should have known, but I didn't, and that's okay.
You discovered it along the way.
Yeah, exactly.
So as now you're encountering people, there may people in the same shoes that you were in at that age in their education. They're not quite sure what they want to do, and if they do find themselves writing about something that fascinates them, how would you encourage them if they're surrounded by peers who may not have the same interests? Like, hey, do something that interests you. You don't have to listen to what they're saying.
I think one of the things that kind of continued to keep me engaged was, like just that I learning how to push myself a little bit or finding my own curiosity in, whatever it was that I was, whether it was like working on pushing myself in some small assignment in school to say, like, can I, like the rest of my classmates are really they're not interested in what they're doing, but like I am. And so maybe I can take this one step further and really kind of like, and I didn't realize I was doing this at the time, but um, I worked a lot with my teachers from a really early age, because there weren't really, there probably weren't enough walls between me and my teachers, but like there was a lot of open communication. And so learning how to talk to your instructors and figuring out, how to keep pushing yourself, or like they are in their field because they're so curious about something. They like something. And so I've always found that people really, talking to my instructors really helped me engage.
As you continue through your academic career, you did something which is very brave. You found that there was an opening in Julia's lab and to work with Julia as a mentor and an advisor,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
put yourself out there. You made yourself vulnerable. You set yourself up for what could have been a failure. How do you find the courage to risk your own self?
Yeah. I had considered going back to grad school for, gosh, I don't know, however many years I was out of school, out of undergrad, which I think was maybe 3 or 4. It's kind of scary that they're blending together now, but so for as long as I had been out, it was always a consideration to go back. And really, I had to wait to find the right time where I felt that like need in myself to kind of, it's like, okay, I don't want to stay where I am. I know that because I had been out for a little while, I was like, okay, I know that I want to pursue this thing, but I just don't know how. And so, I think I was able to kind of bring my community together around me a little bit and have people say, like, get encouragement from them and, advice on my letters and my writing as I reached out to people and created applications. Um, but yeah, the process to find Julia really, I look back on it and it was like it kind of all fell into place. It felt really right. So,
And now you're at the University of Vermont, still in New England. Did you think about some other places? Did you apply somewhere else? Or was like, New England is where I love to be?
no, no, I did. I looked at a handful of schools that were not in New England at all. West Coast, the Midwest, and here. So it really, I was looking for someone who was interested in doing the kind of work I was interested in doing, which I think is so many people who get further into academia knows it takes you to unexpected locations.
Along the way, as you were finding what you were going to do, where you were interested and where you wanted to follow your passions, you work with AmeriCorps.
Yeah.
And that's a place you just go and do some good for some people because they need some support in some way. What was that like for you?
Yeah, so the first time I fell into AmeriCorps was actually in the middle of my time at Smith. So I got about a year and a half in, and I realized that I was still in my hometown, and I needed to leave, and I needed to see something new. So I took a semester break, which my mother was terrified, but I always knew that I was going to go back. And I can't recommend, like so many people and professors and academics are able to take sabbatical once they're tenured, which is a lengthy process. But I so advise taking breaks in life, like it's so important to just, anyway, I was able to take 6 months off of school. I took a semester off and I went out to Western Utah, and I worked in the conservation corps for 6 months. And that was really a transformative experience for me. I made lots of new friends. I was mostly spraying herbicide and mending barbed wire fences, but I was doing it in some of the most beautiful national parks in the world. So that made a big difference. And I was doing it alongside my buddies. And then after I graduated, I went back and I did AmeriCorps for a year, with the National Park Service, with the Inventory and Monitoring Network, doing water quality sampling in Appalachia. And that was also an incredible and transformative experience.
Talk a little bit about your feelings of the importance of science and people in general to give back to humanity.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the scientific work that I think it's, you get into this field because you have an urge to give back. And I think, like it's important to connect what the research that we are doing to the human element because, you have to place the importance of, like the importance of our work into uh into a context, into the context.
Into the context,
Um,
yes, as is the phrase these days.
but yeah, I mean, it's so crucial. I mean, she was so right. So, like everything that we do ties back to, we are observers of our universe. What can we see? And why is it important? And I think that, like serving in AmeriCorps, doing, environmental research, it's easy to kind of like lose sight of that larger goal. But I think it's partly like the communication aspect of scientific research that really, I have a deep interest in it because it brings, it's like, hey, person who knows nothing about this, come learn something. Or, like it connects people back to why we are doing what we are doing, and figuring out ways to invite people in is something that really drew me to the critical zone network in general and Julia's work. And yeah, I'm not sure that that answered your initial question,
No,
but
it did. It did,
yeah,
absolutely. You see the world, you want other people to sort of understand your understandings of it that may be different from them. And so through this work, you can say, hey, this is how I see it. Think about things in this way. That's what I heard from what you said.
yeah, exactly. And like I think no one, it's naive to say that as one human being, I can solve the climate crisis. But it's a, like moving our understanding forward and trying to find solutions is definitely a driver of my work. It's not one that I feel like I acknowledge every day, but it's one that I really am passionate about. So,
Just a couple more questions, and thank you again for taking some time this morning.
of course.
Um, you had some time to reflect on how you would be a student again before you started studenting again. What sort of
Yes.
things did you want to bring to change for the class life balance or a work life balance to find some way to achieve your academic goals, but not lose sight of your own personal relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, this is definitely, it's been a really big challenge for me to go back to school. I was working, or at least, I'm 3 weeks in, so it's been a big adjustment. And I think I was working, a very, kind of strict schedule of like a typical 9 to 5 job with the US Geological Survey. And, I think, moving now into this new chapter, it's really nice to be able to be, I'm pushing myself to be a little bit more flexible with myself and a little bit more forgiving of my time. Um, I went into it saying, like, I'm going to treat this like a job and I will do my work from 9 to 5 and then I will leave. And immediately I've been, like, it's been really nice to take a break, from like however long it is to cook myself a nice dinner. And then I go back to my schoolwork. And okay, it's 11 p.m. and I'm still on my computer, but it's been nice to be able to say my work doesn't all have to get done from one straight time block. And yeah, so I think, it's been a big transition, but it's been really nice too.
My last question is, you are finding yourself and your identity and your place in the world at a time when the world is under serious threat for
Yeah.
climate change, and there's all sorts of disturbances in the political world and the social world. How do you stay hopeful?
Oh my gosh. I have so much hope. I think, it's one of those like, what is life if you can't be hopeful? Um, what's the purpose of keeping going? There's a lot of scary stuff out there. Um, between, like our current political climate, our current climate, Um, and I think that, I think finding small ways in which I think often I turn to my immediate community as being a more, if like a closer place to really affect change. Um, in my younger life, I did a lot of local political work with a mayor in my hometown, um, and and I kind of have taken that same kind of, finding ways in which, like, okay, I can improve the way my community thinks about climate, or the way that UVM starts to address some of the things that they're doing. Not that I've been here for 3 weeks. I can't really say that I've done anything in that realm. But similarly, I think politically, it's like finding ways to feel like you can make a difference. And often on a smaller level, it's more, you can feel the effects a little bit quicker. And there are ripple effects to that.
Thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording and then we'll say goodbye when the recording is over. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for this opportunity, Andrew.